Hi, I'm Peter Buch. As a serial founder, I burned out while scaling my previous company to 10 million users. After selling the company, I took a year off and realized that doing nothing wouldn't help. Running is the only thing that's harder than running your own business, is what a friend told me at the time. So I looked into trail running and fell in love with the sport. Then I realized all the similarities between endurance sports and running your own business. And that's when I knew I had to do something more. That's how Trail and Scale was born. So welcome everybody to the Trail and Scale podcast, where we share conversations with some of the world's most interesting endurance athletes and founders. We'll talk about nutrition, goal setting, wellness, longevity, race planning, and so much more. This podcast is your aid station on your journey to success. Let me take you back to UTCT 2021. It was 5 a.m. in the morning and I was hiking up Table Mountain. It was wet and cold and I really didn't want to be there. But then I heard cowbells in the distance and minutes later I saw this cheering crowd going crazy as Courtney Dauwalter runs up the mountain as the first female runner. I had the best time on top of that mountain, cheering on runners together with this awesome community. What I was witnessing was Ultra Trail Cape Town. It's only fitting that my first guest is Stuart McConnachie, the co-founder of UTCT. Stu McConnachie also co-created Two State Trails, a huge community of trail runners in South Africa and beyond. Stuart McConnachie is one of South Africa's most accomplished ultra-endurance trail runners, with races like UTMB and Western States 100 under his belt. He's also a coach and a businessman, which makes him the perfect match for Trail and Scale. Welcome, Stuart McConnachie.
Thanks very much. Cheers.
Thanks so much for being here.
It's my pleasure, sure. Thank you for the wild introduction, and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
So, UTCT is only weeks away. How are you feeling?
I'm nervous. Yeah, geez, it's a big thing now. There's a lot going on. But I'm confident in our team, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens on race day with obviously all the elites, but not only the elites, friends and community members, to see how they go, achieving goals, breaking goals, and just generally experiencing what UTCT is.
What is UTCT for you?
Look, it's always been a dream for myself and Nick. Nick was the founder of the race. We started in 2014, but I think UTCT now really represents a big race on the international calendar with a quintessential Cape Town feel and a very strong community backing, which for me is the most important part of that ingredient.
What does your day-to-day look like leading up to the race?
Generally, I like to get a run in the morning. I think it helps balance me. It allows some free time just to think, not get caught up in answering mails, although I am doing that generally early in the morning. And then it's just a case of, checking in with suppliers, volunteers, checking in with the team, making sure that everything is kind of lining up and coming together. There's a million different parts that pull this thing together, and it takes a community ultimately to help pull it together. So we're very, very lucky in that sense.
So let's talk about your team. How is your team set up during the year? Like, who are the permanent team members? Mm-hmm. Like, kind of what are their roles, and how does that change getting closer to the race?
We've actually got a really small team. There's obviously myself, and there's Sue Elliott, who's what we call the race manager. And then we have a guy called Martin Kraus, who has a interesting role. He kind of runs the business side of the business, I guess, the event or the business. It allows me to kind of work toward my strengths, which are obviously ideas around the race, connecting with elites, doing all of those things, and not getting caught up in the budgeting side and the banking and the all of those parts of the business, which I think in the past have caught us up at times. And then we've also got Alana Munich, who works kind of on communication to our newsletters, does a lot of design work. And then we have a social media person who is actually based overseas at the moment. But Mars has been with us for almost 3 years now. And you can see on our social that it's very much a structured plan that we work towards with that. So that's pretty much the team. And then as we build towards race day, we start bringing on more and more. Obviously, Cape Town is blessed in the sense that it's a event city. So we use contractors. We bring in contractors, whether it's in the medical field, in the search and rescue, in building our event infrastructure, all of those things. And then we also rely on bringing in people to help with logistics, security, and various other aspects of the event. So as we kind of get closer and closer to the race, I think, if I remember correctly from the stats last year, we go from a team of basically a permanent core of about 4 of us to around 300 contractors involved on the event.
Wow. Coming from the startup world where you raise a lot of money, and then if you grow from 10 to 30 people, or maybe from 30 to 100 over the course of a year, that's a lot. And you have all those growth challenges coming with that. How do you handle that? I mean, is it just a playbook that you figured out over the years?
Yeah, it's like a really strong communication platform, and we rely on trying to use the same contractors again. Obviously, they have built up experience with us in the same field, so it allows us to not have to manage them or waste time on focusing on whether they are going to be able to deliver. And I guess a lot of trust as well, in the process that we have set it up correctly. And if something goes wrong, as long as nobody panics, we can sort it out.
Now, Stu, you've got a passion, you've got a team. What does success look like to you on race day and beyond?
I think it's, we've always kind of said that other people's, our medals are other people's recognition of what we've done. To say a happy customer is a bit cliched, but, we see what it means to people to finish that race when they have to dig themselves out of the hole, when they break barriers, when they get over something, a challenge which perhaps they never thought possible a couple of years ago, or perhaps there was an illness or something like that. We get to share in those moments, and I think if you'd be dead inside if you weren't moved by those moments. So for me, a lot of what we do is that feeling of being able to enable people to do those things.
So success in a nutshell is seeing other people succeed and helping them achieve more.
Yeah.
You mentioned challenges. What was the toughest moment that ever happened at UTCT?
Look, there've been many over the years. I think for if you had to ask myself and Nick, I think getting through the first year was the hardest year. We didn't know what we were doing. We had never done it before. It was our first event. It was very small in comparison to what UTCT is now. But each year we've obviously learned from each experience. But I think that first year was so daunting, taking people across 100 kilometers of Table Mountain, whether they were going to return home. We had such a small team. Volunteers were hard to come by. It really, really stretched us. And I think if you had to ask me if I would do that again, I'll probably say no. Yeah.
Let's talk about Nick and your relationship as business partners and co-founders. How is that going?
Yeah, it's good. Nick he was fundamental in the vision and the idea of getting UTCT up there, and I was fortunate enough to be in the right place at the right time and knew what Nick wanted to do. We knew each other from before UTCT, so we understood each other. But now, it's got to the point where Nick is and has always wanted to be an architect in London. So gradually, should I say, is over the years, he's stepped back and I've kind of taken on more and more, to the point now where, I'll chat to him once every couple of 3 weeks, maybe. It's almost got to the point now where, it's almost easier to not have somebody else kind of checking in on what's happening, because it can become a bit difficult, because you're just so far removed. He is so far removed from the event now that it's quite difficult to keep somebody up to speed. So, that's basically where we are at the moment. So it's come full circle, I guess.
And you mentioned you were at the right place, the right time. What brought you to that point? How did that happen?
Well, I had been working in a cycling shop as the manager of a retail store, and I had just had a kid, and I got ill at the same time. And, I'd always done sport and outdoor living and that stuff. And I really wanted to find that again. I think retail is really hard on your time and your own space. And, I walked out the job, and I had been pretty much footloose, fancy free for a couple of months. And I saw the advertising for it, for Ultra Trail Cape Town on Facebook, and I saw the name at the bottom, Nick Bornman, and I thought to myself, I know that name. I'm sure it's, but at the time, I knew Nick as Niku. He was an Afrikaans guy who was at school below me at school, and anyway, I got hold of him, and at the time he was in Hong Kong, and we had a chat, and I guess to cut a long story short, I said to him, how are you doing this, and do you need help? And he said, look, I'm not sure how I'm going to do it, but I do need help. There's only one problem. I can't pay you. So I said, well, don't worry. I think I know where we're going, so it's fine. And that was it. It's been pretty much 10 years of blood, sweat, and tears. Yeah.
And how did you fund the first couple months without getting paid? At the time I had a young kid, 6 months old, and I had moved back in with my folks. So I went into full dirtbag mode, purely survival. Just I did a couple of other jobs at the time just to make ends meet. But ultimately, my focus was entirely on ensuring that UTCT went from strength to strength, and I was willing to do whatever that took. So, yeah. And one big part of why UTCT became so successful, I believe, is Tuesday Trails, a community of runners that you helped start.
Yeah.
How is that story? What is the story behind Tuesday Trails?
Yeah, very much again, basing off, we looked at what was happening internationally. Nick was based in Hong Kong, and we felt it was fundamental to create a community in order to kind of be part of this race and grow this race together. And look, if you had told me what Tuesday Trails would become, I would have said no ways. We had no idea what power lay in it, I guess. And I had a lot of experience, kind of growing up playing sports, building teams, building a brand around a team and things like that. So it kind of came naturally to me. It did take some time. It took us a lot longer than people imagine. We started in 2014. We had one group, then it became two, and attracting female runners was really difficult. They were intimidated, and then things started to just change. It just started to become I guess we established the core values of the community, and we were pretty firm with those. If people kind of pushed the limits on them, we just kept them in line. And to watch it kind of flourish and to see where it is now is mind blowing. So it has been a major part of what UTCT has become, is that community behind the event.
And it seems like a lot of that progresses naturally, right? You start a community, give them a purpose about something that they can grow it together, essentially. But there are important pillars in a community that, it won't work if gender equality, for example, doesn't work, or you just have males drinking beer and they just might intimidate, as you say, other runners, especially female runners. Were there specific things you did to counterbalance that?
Yeah, like I said, I mean, we were pretty careful of, obviously how we communicated. We always wanted to be a trail running crew at heart. So the fundamental part of it was a running crew. So you needed to be able to run. So barrier to entry was only that. And then, we did have situations where, I picked up, because I've just kind of got an ear to the ground all the time. And you pick up stories of guys like, kind of asking girls for numbers or going to them on Facebook Messenger and saying, hey, do you want to go do something? And look, those things are going to happen, but it's also how it happens that can become wrong, I guess, would be the word I'd look for. And I would just kind of step in there and just say, hey, listen, this isn't how we operate here. So either fit in or find another crew, basically. So, yeah.
Let's talk about race nutrition and generally nutrition. A really important topic, obviously, for every runner. I noticed this morning you had a decaf coffee.
Yeah.
You mentioned caffeine doesn't work so well for you, but during on race days, it's something different. I want to talk about race nutrition, but I also want to talk about your workday nutrition, because every day you give your best, and you're growing this community, you're growing UTCT. How do you function, and how do you make sure you eat well on a day-to-day basis, and how does that change on a race?
Yeah, I think I've been quite lucky in that I've grown up playing or being exposed to professional sport. I was exposed to nutrition quite early on. So the old pie and a Coke went out the window quite early on in life. I realized what the building blocks were for successful athletes across the board. And kind of for me, I learned pretty quickly that as long as you're eating clean, not too much, not too little, it's pretty hard not to kind of do a good job of it. I kind of mix it up between salads, vegetables, proteins. I've been down the vegetarian route, didn't work for me. So I've always experimented with food. I've been fascinated by it, how it influences performance. But ultimately, I think balance is the most important part of it. Whether it's water, coffee, sugars, caffeine, whatever you want, on a day-to-day basis, just to fueling your system. Because if you're looking to get between 80 to 100 Ks plus a week, you're going to need to fuel your system well, and you're going to need to make sure that it's fueled well. Otherwise, long term, it's not going to be happy with you.
And what happens with balance on race day?
Sure. Balance goes out the window on race day. No, I'm, through experience, a lot of experiences and a lot of thought, I've kind of figured out what works for me. I can get by on what for some people may not work. So I wouldn't necessarily follow anyone else's example. I think it's best to figure it out yourself. But there certainly are ways and means to get round situations. I think your making sure your gut is happy on race day or race when you're racing is important. And that is, there can be so many factors from heat to overeating to, just stress. GI stress can come from multiple factors. But I think, if you're looking for a formula, it takes time to figure it out. I would say, what works for me is not necessarily going to work for anybody else. But I do think that there are some things which do work, like caffeine for me on a race day. I can't use it outside of racing, but on a race, I'm all for it. It's a definite performance enhancer for me.
And you're also coaching athletes?
Yeah, a few athletes.
What is your advice on how do you go about advising them on nutrition?
So my biggest things are to sip and to eat a small amount every 45 minutes, basically to nibble. If you eat too much too soon or drink too much at one point, that's what leads to, for me, is what leads to like the intestinal stress or GI stress. And that's where the body goes and you get nausea, you start vomiting because it's just you're putting too much pressure. I mean, that old, there's an Afrikaans saying, "Maag is vol, oog is toe." So if your stomach's full, your eyes shut, so that's because the gut takes a lot of energy to digest. So if your process or what you're trying to do is run 100 kilometers, if you're putting extra time and energy, or if your body's taking extra time and energy to digest food, it's going to be counterproductive to what you're actually trying to do, although you do need to eat. So I think if you can take on liquid carbs, if you can take on gels, when you're moving, that's the key for me. And then at aid stations, I rely on a salty carb, be it potatoes, small bits and bobs that I can just kind of nibble and balance the sugar with the salt. That for me works really well, and that's what I kind of advise my runners. That your basic rule is you must eat within every 45 minutes, and that you mustn't eat too much at any one time.
You mentioned balance a few times in our conversation now. How do you make sure for yourself and your team that you remain this balance in stressful times? And what are the things that are just absolutely you can't say no to, like that you do every week no matter what?
Well, I always encourage the team to exercise. I think it's important that we are ultimately, everybody who's involved in the race is actually a runner, so they understand it. And I think if you're not kind of tapping into that in the build up to the race, it just leads to a disconnect from your normal self. and the stress just starts to build. It's a stressful environment as it is. So I try and make sure everybody kind of keeps cool and just enjoys the process. It's, we work really, really hard to make this thing what it is. And I always try and remind the team that, we have to enjoy it, because otherwise what is the point of doing it? Sure, there's going to be times where it's stressful and it may not seem like fun. But you've got to kind of, I think one of the sayings we have is don't express the stress. So don't run around on race day looking like a mess, because it's just going to impact other people's perception of the occasion ultimately, and you don't want to do that. There's that old saying, like a duck, feet are going crazy underneath, but on top it's just cool. No. So that's those are kind of a couple of the things that we like to kind of remind ourselves of. But ultimately, I try and make sure that the team is exercising.
All right. There is quite a bit of hype around UTCT now. There's a lot of momentum in the trail running community. Was that always like that in your first couple of years starting this?
No, I don't think so. No, there were other races obviously that were probably more important at the time. So we had to work for our kind of slice of the pie, if you want to call it that. And I think, obviously major factors around it were attracting elite runners, and also knowing that, I kind of, we always looked at sport and I looked at, how sport is kind of consumed locally versus internationally. And I just always felt that, marketing is such an important part of anything, and so we focused quite heavily on marketing and driving this, this energy around the event, the build up. How do you communicate? How do you get people's attention before the race so that it's not just a one weekend thing? And I think, we've been pretty successful at it. And that a lot of that does boil down to attracting international runners. People get excited, and now it's seen as kind of the last dance, the big show, all of those things, and those are sayings that you kind of quietly bed into the community, and slowly but surely they take on a voice of their own. So yeah.
Do you love your mountains as much as you love your running? What is a happy day for you? Like, what is your happy place, and how do you find it? And tell us about that experience.
Yeah, ultimately, what drew me to the sport is that energy that I can find in the mountains. I'm lucky in that I get to kind of, my job is involved in it now, but I think, I genuinely love spending time in the mountains. I like, the energy that I get from being in the mountains is very important to how I can kind of go out in the world and represent myself or represent the race or anything like that. But it's a difficult one to kind of put my finger on. But if I go back and think about, where I'm kind of most happiest, I guess, is when I'm moving through the mountains, sharing that space with friends, with the dog perhaps, or by myself. There's a feeling of contentedness, and I love to be able to share that with people, and I don't necessarily have to be there at the same time. But when I see people, who've tapped into that, that for me is a major part of why do what I do.
Let's talk a little bit about the trail running landscape in terms of races. What is it like right now, and how has it changed over the last 5 to 10 years? What are the challenges for you as a race organizer to stand out and to be meaningful and to create something that people actually care about and attend?
Yeah, the landscape has certainly changed in the last few years, especially post-COVID. It's there's a rush towards professionalism almost, which I'm all for, but at the same time, we've seen what happened with skateboarding and with surfing and all of these sports, which kind of lost touch with their grassroots appeal or part, and became all about the brands, all about what was next. And I think where UTCT would like to be different, or thing is that we want to be a race that really stands for something, that people genuinely feel different about when they come to the race or they're involved in the race. And that kind of stems from, I guess, that feeling of community. We want the elite runners to be appreciated and to be part of that community, not to be different or outside of that community. And I think if we can offer that and show that there is a different path, perhaps, for other organizers, for runners, for brands, that the future of the sport is not necessarily all lost down the corporate or commercial chain, that is really strong at the moment. So yeah, for me that would be pretty much trying to have a voice in this space, and luckily UTCT we are strong enough to remain independent and to have that voice.
And what is that heart and soul of UTCT and trail running as a whole? And then how do you keep that?
Look, I think it really comes down to the fact that we genuinely care about each other. As a race, we care about what people, how they experience it, how they're doing. Do they have a voice? Do they feel like they've got a voice? We want people to feel that they're part of something, not just a number, not just a part of some global series where you're just ticking boxes and it's all a big commercial thing. So yeah, I like to think that if you can offer that or show that, people that I guess it's like if you smile, people will smile back, and if you're not prepared to smile, then how do you expect to get that smile back? So you have to kind of go out there with that energy of this is who we are, this is what we want, and then rely on the fact that the community actually wants that too. They just perhaps may not know that it's there.
Over the last couple of years, you had athletes like Jim Walmsley or Courtney Dauwalter racing and winning UTCT. How did you get your first elite to come to South Africa?
Look, Cape Town's not exactly hard to attract people to, so we are very lucky. And then what we also we were part of the Ultra Trail World Tour I think we started in 2017, and that helped quite a lot. I think it was 2017 or 2018, and that helped obviously because now you're on a global scale or global platform, which allowed runners to kind of be recognized globally on this platform. Yeah, and then once we had kind of attracted a few, then it just became a lot easier. And over the years, excuse me, the race has developed a reputation as being competitive, as difficult to win, and once that starts, you just have to keep feeding it then, and I think we've done that.
From a founder's perspective, what is that process like? Is it like a sales picking like 100 elites that you would like to have and then just phoning them and sending automated emails every 2 weeks? And what is that process like?
No, I've kept it pretty personal. I certainly don't send out a group mail and say, hey, is anyone interested? We kind of look at, who's around, who's popular. We also like to balance it between, an out and out, someone who's going to, win the race versus someone who has a strong sense of community, who has perhaps been here before and wants to come back. Those are always good signs for us as a race if internationals and elites want to come back. So yeah, it's certainly a case, and we are fortunate now in that I guess our email address gets shared and people contact us, and then it also comes down. The last few years, what we've done as well is contact brands. So we have the brand manager or the athlete managers for most of the brands, and we'll contact them and we'll say, this is kind of what an elite offering is. Please let your athletes know. This is the dates, et cetera, and from there, then athletes will contact us. And often it's a case of talk in 2023, but race in 24 or 25. So it's a process because everyone's got their calendar and their dream. Next year, I want to do these races. So it kind of works in circles. So you've got to be front of mind, and in a way which doesn't feel like they're just a number. I think we've always appreciated elites and tried to do what we can to make them feel appreciated. And in this day and age, I think it does make a difference.
You're an athlete yourself. You run a lot, and you've done some of the world's biggest races yourself. How does it feel to leave Cape Town and do a run like Western States?
Yeah, sure. Western States, I guess, was a dream come true. For I guess it is for so many of us. It's a great privilege, obviously, to be able to run these races. I think for me, Western States was amazing because it's the most storied 100-miler. The community behind it is bar none, I would say. And it's a hugely tactical race, something which I quite enjoy. How to approach it. Be coming out of what was winter for us into I guess the cauldron of the canyons and all of that. It was very much an amazing experience, and like it at the time I wasn't. Afterwards, I guess I was like, sure, I'm done. That I won't go back, but I would jump at the chance to go back. Yeah, absolutely.
Your goal was finishing in 24 hours?
Yeah.
How did that go?
I guess like a lot of us, we keep our goals very close to our chests. So I knew kind of what I was going for. Certainly getting that 24-hour, sub 24-hour buckle was the ultimate goal. If things fell apart, that was what I would always try and hang on for. I certainly knew that I had sub 21 in me somewhere. It was just depending on how it all went, and it went pretty well. So
19 hours, 47 minutes, 33 seconds. Yeah. Your official time.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it was quite a day. Thank you. Sure. No, it was. Yeah, I had great support. I started pretty conservatively, as I generally do. And then, yeah, I actually was struggling at about 70 Ks. Body was like really sore. Just so much running. It's not it's like the antithesis of UTMB, where you're going up a mountain and then running down the mountain. This is just running. And it was quite high altitude wise. And everything just kind of hurt, and I was kind of struggling. And I got to, I think it was just over 70 Ks just before you drop into the canyons. And I was leaving the aid station, and I remember seeing a sign on the side of the trail. They had like all these Corex board signs, and it was like handwritten. I was like, you'd rather be here than Plutterklip, so keep going, kind of thing. And it was from the Tuesday Trails crew. And that just like flipped a switch, because I was like, okay, you're here, make the most of it. Get out of this pity party or whatever you were, and start moving. And I was, at that time, it was perfectly timed that I hit the canyons, which are quite steep and technical, down and then up. And that just broke up the rhythm of constant running, which was really, really hard on the body. And then I came out of the canyons, and I'd started overtaking people. And once that started, it was just a case of like, keep going, and don't stop. And yeah, I didn't. It was an amazing experience, and I'm very, very happy that it obviously worked out so well.
Just like in the world of business, momentum is everything, right? But how do you gain that momentum, and how do you get it back? Because that's what business owners and athletes alike are struggling with. Like, you feel like 70 Ks, that's a third of the race in, a little bit more, but you just can't do it anymore. What's going on in your head, and how do you get out of that?
Yeah, I think, for me, it's very much a change of how do you take where you are and use your mind to kind of change the perspective. So, by seeing that sign, I was able to kind of change the narrative from, geez, this is hard and wow kind of thing, to, hey, I'm here and I'm the lucky one and I can do this. So just get moving. And obviously the landscape did change as well at the same time. So it allowed for very much a fresh start. But I think, no matter how hard things get and how difficult they feel at the time, you have to just really focus on changing, from, oh man, this is so tiring, this is so sore, like me, woe is me kind of situation, to, okay, cool, just move for the next, 40 minutes, 20 minutes, get to the next aid station, whatever it is, get this gel down, get moving, and be relentless about your pursuit of, or whatever you're doing. And so I always like to say, like, even if you're walking, be relentless about it, because that just changes the mindset, from, okay, well, I'm just walking along here, to, well, I'm going to make the best that I can out of this walking, however long I'm going to walk for. So, once you start approaching things like that, and you changing, like, every single situation is an opportunity to change and to move into a better space. I think it's just a matter of time before you start moving better, and then you very soon forget about that situation that you were in, where it was so difficult and so hard, and how was I ever going to get moving, to running down the next section or running up a hill. And I always like to use aid stations as points. Get to the next aid station, get to the next climb, just to break up the race. Don't think of, wow, it's 100 miles. Like, I'm only at 70. How am I going to run another 100 kilometers here or 90 kilometers? It's too much. It's too much, because I have been in that situation before. But it's easy for it to become overwhelming. But I think if you just break it down, move into the next space, be relentless about what you're doing, concentrate on your food, then things start to change.
As a startup founder, it always scared me when I had that momentum to keep it. I built an app business that grew quite a lot, and we had an office in LA, and so at a time we woke up to 100,000 new downloads overnight, and this was that feeling where we had that momentum where we could have been something huge. And that was the only time, thinking back, where I felt super uncomfortable. And you would expect it's the opposite. When things are going well, you would think you're happy and stuff. Yeah. Is there a parallel to keep, on how to keep momentum in running and how to keep momentum in business?
Yeah, I think in life, I guess it's general, would not to be, not to not celebrate the highs, but not to get carried away by them. The good times are going to be there, enjoy them, but that, like in a race or anything, you go around a corner, there's another big climb, there's, a pebble in your shoe that becomes a blister, and you've got to get over that. Do you stop at the next station, fix the blister, or do you just bite down and carry on going? I think you have to celebrate the highs in order to appreciate them. But you're also going to know that at any point things can change, and not to be a pessimist, thinking that, oh well, what's the point in celebrating the good times if there's just going to be bad times around the corner. I think it's just a learning process of how you deal with both of them. From, I guess, raising a kid is quite similar, and you just never quite know what you're going to get. But when you see life kind of through their eyes, you realize that, okay, well, it's you just keep going, because there's nothing else to do. Yeah.
That simple, eh? Just keep going.
Yeah, I mean, look, that is obviously simplified. But yeah, if you've got two options really: is you drop out at the aid station or you keep going. And I would always say to that person, when you're sitting at that aid station and you're saying to yourself, "Look, I can't go on," you can go on. It's just a case of getting up and getting out of there. Don't waste time at that aid station. Get out, get going, and things will change.
What are your aid stations for your business?
Good question. I think for me, it's in a way I need to tap out in a way and go to the mountains or go to quiet places to re-energize myself. I'm not naturally a social person, so being in a group or being at the event does take a lot of energy. So I like to kind of go away, disconnect from phones, TVs, whatever you need, and also disconnect from work, not be available. That for me is the most important part of kind of recharging myself, and a lot of that time would probably be spent, exploring, running, doing things that fill my bucket. I think that would probably be it.
And how do you navigate a really rough time in business? Something similar to you halfway through the race and your knee hurts and it's just getting worse and worse.
Yeah, I'm lucky in that we've got partners who we discuss everything worth. We navigate together. But as an individual, I think it is definitely something I'm still learning. But I would definitely say that what works for me is to kind of pull the people I trust in and communicate with them, so those people understand what I'm going through, what the business is going through, in order to give those people perspective. You very often kind of feel, and I've caught out, and I still get caught out doing it, is taking on the load by myself, and then people think that they've done something wrong because you're obviously internalizing too much. So I think that for me is important, communicating it, where we are as a business, what we're going through, what the plan is, what my vision for this business is. So to always kind of return to a true north or a positive north, so that the rest of the team feel like, okay, we're in the situation now, but there's still a plan and there's still a goal to go there and to be there and to be the, so that they don't feel like it's all lost.
Speaking of goals, like what are those goals for UTCT, and how big can this be? Like, do you have any bigger vision behind it for the next, say, 10 years?
Yeah, we certainly, believe that the sport is evolving very quickly, and we want to be part of that evolution. Live broadcast is part of it. Podcasts are a huge part of it. But in terms of the race, we've got to work closely with our partners, our sponsors, sandparks, is to see where we can grow the race. Obviously for us, there's room in the 100 miler and the 100K to attract more international runners. And I think it's just a matter of time before those runners start coming in greater numbers to experience what we have as not only a course, but as a community here. I think they're very very big differences between our race and what is happening around the world, and there's some exciting things coming as well. So there's certainly we don't feel like, oh well, this is it. It's for me, this is we're about to kind of go into our 10th year, and we're just kind of getting started in a way.
There's more than one race now, though, right? So there must be a bigger plan or a bigger goal behind you guys as a company.
Yeah. Look, I mean, we took on Ultra Trail Drakensberg last year, and we've really kind of started to do some things there, which we think will open up that race and make it not necessarily more than it is, because it is an amazing experience as it is. We just want to help bring more people there to it, to experience it. And we believe that, with more people, you generate more hype, more excitement, and that shared feeling of accomplishment. There certainly are some goals, but short term, it's more just establishing what we have, getting the business side of things on a steady ship, and then moving on from there. Yeah.
And personally, any big races or any big adventures coming up?
No, to be honest, I mean there certainly are some exciting things on the horizon, which allow me to do more. But locally, I love racing kind of a few of the races. I've got funnily enough, I'd like to go back to Two Oceans and get a silver there. Something that I missed in a few years back, and I feel like I can probably still get it now, before I get too old. But yeah, like a lot of my time and energy goes towards obviously the race, but then my kid as well, who's now 10 going on 11. And I know that in probably a few years' time, he's going to turn around and tell me I'm no longer as cool as I thought I was. So I want to make the most of that time with him, and so I've got to balance everything, as well as be ambitious.
So the next weeks leading up to UTCT, it's 3 weeks away. What are going to be the crucial points and the crucial days leading up to that event?
Sure, every day feels crucial now. But, I think what really starts to get exciting for me is, the elites start arriving. Everyone starts, kind of posting, getting onto the trails, experiencing it. Those parts for me are really exciting. For us as a team, it's just down to, ticking the boxes, making sure that everything's lining up. All the last minute negotiations, if there are, that with landowners or, any questions that go out, or everything's sorted there. We have everything sorted with our landowners, don't worry. But, there's always last minute things that pop up. It's very much just a case of kind of going about things calmly, trying to ensure that, we communicate with every single person who needs to be communicated with. And then if our suppliers or a landowner needs to know something, we can get to them pretty quickly and settle any nerves or deal with any situations that may have arisen. But ultimately everything is kind of ready to go. And now it's just a matter of counting down and working towards those final days.
And the day after? Crashing?
Yeah.
Sleeping?
Yeah, it's quite difficult, because you're on such a high, but you're pretty exhausted afterwards, and you want to kind of absorb all of those moments and excitement from people posting and all of that stuff. You want to relive it. You don't want to let it go, but at the same time you are pretty tired, and there's a lot to do post event in terms of wrapping it up. And, there's a timeline on that. So we put ourselves under quite a lot of pressure to make sure everything's wrapped up by about the 15th of December. Otherwise, Cape Town and South Africa tends to shut down.
Yeah.
So we're forced in a way to kind of work hard after the event to ensure that everything is tight and and done. And then that allows us to just take a bit of a break. And then come back and hit the ground running for UTD.
All right. All the best with the upcoming races.
Okay.
And thank you so much for being here. This was amazing. Thank you, Stu.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your time.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Trail and Scale podcast. If you like this episode, please take a moment and click that subscribe button. It really means a lot to us. Special thanks to our sponsors Stardust Coffee and our production partners Sledgehammer Studio and 2250. Go check them out and support them if you want to support us. Stay tuned, we have many more interesting athletes and founders lined up that we're going to speak to over the course of the next couple of months.